Good day, everybody. Thanks for joining the ETBFSI session. I look forward to having this brief discussion of what we see with Quest and what we hear from our customers today in the Indian market. My experience with talking with a lot of Indian banks and Indian corporates today is, customers are constantly faced with a big challenge, and that's really across explosion of data. And data has become an asset, right? And data has become the real wealth of an enterprise today, right? You have data that's across generated by applications from majority of your devices. You have data also that's constantly been coming out of every interaction you're doing on a social media or anywhere and anything, right? And that's actually led to a huge amount of challenge to a lot of employees and IT organizations. And what we're seeing is that data is also resulting in a lot of challenges, whether it is in terms of constantly adopting to what you could make sense of this data, as well as how do you manage that really well, right? Today, you're in an environment where no more your applications are just on-prem. They are all in hybrid state. They're in cloud. Your ID infra is nowhere more fluid. It's all there, and this is actually leading to a lot of management challenges itself. And with that, what we're seeing is there is a constant new threat that's coming about by every day in this ever-evolving cyber threat world, right? And you can see that with a lot of challenges that are coming about that. Okay. So what we see is, IT teams today are really poised with a big challenge, and that's how do you actually manage the overall health of the IT enterprise or the infrastructure itself, and that comes about, how do you manage your IT infrastructure with the less number of team members you have or the IT resources you have. You have to do now more with the less number of employees, and that means you have to manage your environment. You have to ensure uptime, and also you have to constantly keep guard that your organization is not being put across this threat, or is not being facing all these threats or challenges that are coming about it. And leading to that is, there is a constant push from the business to IT to move towards faster and newer technologies like cloud, right? And how do you adopt to this newer breed of technologies like cloud, or being on a hypervisor, and being with the new normal of being working from home and having constant access to these resources. And that's actually leading to a bigger challenge, right? And that's where organizations today are looking on how do you secure your environment from what you're currently managing. The historic way of managing is you build good firewalls, you build good antivirus technologies, and you safeguard your IT assets, you safeguard your infrastructure. But now we're seeing with employees being more across the globe or across the country in tier 2, tier 3 cities where they have just an internet connection, they are able to access a lot of these resources via browser or via VPN connection and enter into your organization's enterprise itself, right? Your IT enterprise. So there is where you see that how do you constantly assess who has access to what and what these information is being translated back to them. And they are also, to make themselves more efficient in the way they're working, they're constantly requesting newer access to newer applications, newer resources, and all of that. So organizations today have this big challenge of, how do you govern an identity? How do you ensure it's being reviewed, and how do you govern what the employee or the identity is actually doing within the enterprise itself? And thereabout, we also see that there is a superset of users, right? Your privileged access users, who have more in-depth access to an application or data or so on. And how do you really enforce governance around their accesses? And that could be around what they are accessing, or whether they doing any keystroke logging, or really seeing what these administrators are really do. There was a recent research that Quest did with a lot of large organizations. I think about Fortune 2000 odd companies across the world, and close to about 30 odd percent did come back and respond that organizations are facing the bigger threat with employees, either by accidental or a disgruntled employee doing some change within the IT infrastructure, which is actually opening up a big loophole in terms of the security measure, right? And this becomes the paradigm importance within our organization as well, right? If you talk about a bank, you do not want the banking enterprise or the banking infra to come down because somebody did something wrong intentionally or unintentionally, right? And that's where it really ensures you need to actually enforce these kind of mechanisms to actually assess what these people are having access to and how do you govern what they are doing. So in case of any breaches, you are able to quickly revert back. And this also is coming about a lot of challenges, right? In terms of now with endpoints or what these devices are accessing your infrastructure, that needs to be constantly patched. It constantly needs to be provided with the latest security patches, so they are also not vulnerable, right? It's no more the time that you're sitting within your environment, that you're within your firewalls, so these patches or these antivirus definitions are not so important. But now it's suddenly become very, very important that how you actually constantly keep the device up to date as you're accessing your IT infrastructure itself. And what we see also is a very critical aspect that's coming in. Most organizations, the heart of the organization, what we call is, the Active Directory, right? And all the IDs or, employee information is stored with the Active Directory. And Active Directory happens to orchestrate a lot of these accesses back into all the employees in terms of what they're accessing, how they're federating this content and seeing all of that. And that somehow seems to be the new spot where hackers are constantly trying to hit upon an Active Directory and breach these Active Directory credentials to further spread within the enterprise as like a cancer, right? And Quest provides these technologies where Active Directory can be safeguarded, Active Directory can be enforce certain policies around Active Directory, where if any of these threats really impact Active Directory, we are quickly able to revert. And also, furthermore, if your Active Directory is actually down, how do you actually bring back your Active Directory up and running fast? And what does this really mean, right? I've been saying the end-to-end governance is really important in terms of the right access is being given to resources, the right people are seeing the stuff, and they're able to view the right content at the right time, right? And all of this means that you are ensuring whether it's your employees, administrators, partners, customers, or whoever they are, they have the best of the content that is orchestrated back to them. We also see that the traditional perimeter was the main line of attack, and it was the main important defense for any cyber attack. But the proliferation of these devices and work from home has placed a significant stress on this security perimeter, right? And the fact that you have multi-factor authentication and identities are simply to reinforce the organization sees as a critical component of a pragmatic and more modern security strategy, right? In order to lock down and protect your organization in today's environment, you need to really recognize what identities must be protected, who are your VIP users, who are the critical users, and then apply and manage and enforce and report on these policies constantly associated with these users. And this will help you to optimize your your defense strategy or your defense principles and slow down hackers even if they gain an access to your network, right? We want to limit the damage, and that's what you want to really do by locking away your privileged accounts so they don't get access to critical information, and then safeguard or secure your your key, or what we call as a VIP users, so the impact is minimal. There should also be multiple ways to confirm identity and detect cyber threats, rather than just depending on the preliminary or the primary ways of having a firewall to keep the hackers out. And I stated this, right? As organizations are constantly moving towards cloud and work from home, remote working, zero trust architecture, and this is probably that you've been hearing constantly over the last year or two, mandates that you need to deploy certain things like multi-factor authentication, encryption within a specific time period, and it's more becoming prominent that as we give employees or give this privilege to our employees, they are constantly having the same level of trust back as what we are giving it to them, right? This practice of eliminating vulnerable permissions and unnecessary and excessive accesses in favor of specific rights delegation, and also even provisioning, right? And provisioning the right resources and deprovisioning them helps and protects the organizations from on a regular basis and an ongoing basis from the changes that are being very, very constant. This will also further reduce risk and limit any potential damage that could come about any of these kind of threats if it really hits. So zero trust is security is no longer just an option for the banks, government, or corporate enterprises, but you really need to focus upon how you actually bring about and practice zero trust, and ensuring that the governance is maintained in your applications, in your data, in your infrastructure itself. And also, it just doesn't stop with technologies what Quest and One Identity provides, right? It also involves in a lot of education back to your employees and back to your team members on on how you can enforce that we don't really fall prey to any of these phishing attacks or threats, because training and knowledge sharing is what's really important. Along with that, what we see is the endpoint is usually the first point of entry for any of these kind of threats or attacks itself, right? And that's where Quest really comes into the play. And we have kind of really worked very good with a lot of large banks within the Indian space, as well as even government and private enterprises, where we're helping customers to really assess what the environment is about. What are the kind of devices that are there? Do you have some orphan device that are lying somewhere out there that you're not aware of, which could be a vulnerable point? You discover all these assets, you manage those assets, and you constantly are patching and updating them. You might have about 10, 20, 50 different publishers that you're using, OEMs like Quest or many other ones, right? And these publishers are also constantly updating their security policies, security packages. How do you distribute them effectively to them and ensure that your policies are up to date, and how do you patch management to your endpoints, so those endpoints don't really become a reason to initiate any of these threats. And even if they are liable or prone to being under state of attack, how do you get real-time alerts so you're able to curb and contain the problem itself? And you also further are able to do a lot of stuff in terms of how do you configure certain policies, roll it out to your devices. You can do a lot of things like around managing what we call as agnostic to any platform. You could have a Windows, you could have a multi OS environment, multi-flavored operating systems running within your environment. And how do you bring all of them in a single pane of truth is going to be really critical, and Quest really supports in that part of it. What's next for you people, right? As IT leaders, leaders, and as we are transforming our banks, as we're transforming our industries with this constant challenge that we are facing ahead of this pandemic, is we should ensure that the business does not stop, right? The business doesn't stop because you need to really, as IT leaders, give the right people the right access, and give them the right resources to continue doing what they were doing as they were working at home, right? Because we do not know when is it going to be back to normal, and even if we were back to normal and sitting in our offices, we still would emerge to be as remote workforces, and thereby we would be able to ensure that we are still meeting our corporate objective, and also having the right reasons in terms of accessing these right resources as such. Just a quick introduction into Quest. Quest is a leader for the last 30 years in helping customers in managing a lot of their IT infrastructure management problems, administration problems. We have over 4,000 odd employees across 100 different countries. And, in India, we've been present for the last 20 years, working across different sectors, whether it's the defense, government, banks, corporate enterprises. And that's what the real trust is with our customers putting back on Quest itself. So when you turn to Quest, we really help you to manage, modernize, and secure your business in a very modular fashion that you really can get started in an easy way, and we are more quickly able to adapt to your enterprise and give you the faster values in these ever-changing times. Thank you for listening to me.